Hello everybody, and this is another video about time prepositions. In the previous video we worked with the simple prepositions like at, on, in, and I hope you remember the principles. Today we will talk about more complex prepositions. We call them intermediate prepositions of time. So here we will be talking about timelines, about when the action happened and how the actions are connected. So time prepositions are closely connected to verb tenses. So I will be giving you some hints about that too. Okay, so let's start. The first prepositions which we will be discussing tell us about the finished actions or complete actions. So when you want to say about some action in the past and you want to give us the point when this action started and finished. So you saw the complete action and you show when was it, okay? So relating to the present moment. We use a simple preposition ago with the time periods. So we say, I spoke to him an hour ago, okay? So up to now, this was an hour ago. And please remember that we say not 1 hour ago. In English, if it's one period, you use the indefinite article instead of one, okay? An hour ago. So this is our time phrase. It shows when the action started and finished, relating to now. And the same principle you will find when you talk about the action which will start and finish in the future. The similar principle. So if you want to show in what time, according to the moment of now, okay? So you will use in. I will speak to him in an hour, okay? The same n, and I show how far it is from the present moment. So ago for past, in, okay, for the future, okay? So we also use the preposition after, and in some accents, you can use after for the future too. So I will speak to him after an hour. But traditionally, we use after to talk about the past action happening after something. Okay? So for example, we had some action and we did the next one. So we want to show how long, okay, after the first action. So we say, we spoke after an hour, meaning that after an hour of doing something. So you need to understand this initial point and you show how later after this initial point it happened. Okay, so yeah, single action, ago, future action, in, okay, and after, showing the similar but for the past. So we met, okay, and we spoke an hour after, okay? According to the moment of now, we spoke an hour ago, and we will speak in an hour for the future. You also use the preposition after when you show the interconnection of two actions. So after we spoke, we did another action. So it is not a preposition, it is a conjunction. So it uses, we use it to connect the parts of the sentence together, but still you show again two actions, okay? After we did something, okay, we did another action. After, if you remember, showed the actions in the direct order. So after we did this, yeah, so we did something else. After we spoke, I made a decision. So with before, it's a similar connection, but in another direction, okay? So if you want to show that something happened before something, okay? Not in the direct order, so in the indirect order. I knew my decision even before we spoke. Not, I didn't make it after we spoke. I knew it before our conversation. Again, it is the conjunction because it connects two parts of a complex sentence. So, but as I said in the example, you can also say, I knew the decision before our conversation. Then it is the preposition. Okay, So before shows this indirect order when we make a reference to some past. But there is one more very important usage of before, which people make often make mistakes about. Okay, so we use before about some action which happened, and we state it happened in some unknown past. When you don't show the point, you don't know when, but it happened in some past. Okay, and people used to tend to use earlier here instead, and this is wrong, because earlier can be used only to talk about the arranged time. Okay, so earlier in the clock. So let's start the class earlier. We usually start the class at 9 o'clock. Let's start the class 10 minutes earlier. So meaning you don't always say it, but you imply, okay, you think about it, about this arranged point of the time. So you can't say we have spoken earlier. It sounds strange in English because I'm like, earlier than what? Okay, so like earlier the... Okay, so when you don't give the point of time, you just state some past action, making reference in some past. Okay, so, and this will be typical for present perfect if you remember, because past simple shows the actions stating the point, okay, and present perfect shows the finished action without stating the exact point of time. So we have spoken before, we have never met before, I have been here before. So please never say earlier. So you use earlier in the context of the point of time. She came earlier. Okay, so the meeting was arranged for 1 p.m. but she came earlier than that time. So I hold it in my hand, then the time of the meeting. And we are moving on. Okay, so before, not earlier, I hope you remember, okay? So before we talked about completed actions. So now let's talk about different moments of the actions, when the action began, when the action finished, or something like that. Popular prepositions till and until, okay? So note the spelling. You use 2 L's in till, but 1 L in until, okay? So this one is incorrect. Okay, so people often ask me, what is the difference? There is no difference in the meaning. Okay, till and until mean the same, but until can be a conjunction, as I told you about after and before. So until can connect the parts of a complex sentence. For example, we spoke until he returned. Okay, so we spoke, sentence 1, he returned, sentence 2. So until is used as a conjunction to connect them together. You can't use till for that. But if you use it as a preposition of time, both till and until are okay. So they show the point till what till the action lasted. Okay, so it is the final point of one action. Okay, so it can be used for the past, for the present, for the future. They are not time markers for any particular tense. They can be used everywhere. So we spoke until midnight. Okay, so I show you the action, okay, and I show you the point when it finished this one action. So I say until midnight, till midnight. As I told you, there is no difference. Okay, so we will be there till September. So we are there, and like the action will last for a while, yeah. And this is again the final point. Till and until show the final point. So people often ask me if it's possible to say to in this meaning, because to usually shows the direction. As a time preposition, it will be understood, but it's not typical. Okay, so to usually shows the final point when you name both the beginning and the end. Okay, so let's have a look at this example here. So I know when the action started and I know when the action finished. So when I name both of these points, it is the set expression from to. Okay, and you can't change it. You can't say from till. Well, maybe in informal language, but I'm giving you like how it is supposed to be used. Okay, so in just in a general style. Okay, so always from and always to. So we don't like to use to just to define the final point. You can say up to. Okay, so we will stay there up to September. So it is sometimes used. We spoke from midnight to dawn. Okay, so dawn, the moment of the sunrise. Yeah, so it's dawn, not down. Okay, and I show both the initial point and the final point. Okay, so that's a phrase. So we covered the final point, we covered both points. How to say about the initial point only. So I want to say when I started doing the action. Okay, so if I don't name the final point, it's logical, maybe the action is still unfinished. Okay, so we only mention initial points for the actions in present perfect. So since is actually quite a strong marker for present perfect or present perfect continuous in our case. So like we'll change it for here. Okay, I have one action which I started doing in some point which I know, okay, and the action is still lasting, it's still unfinished. Okay, so I am looking at it from now. I don't know when it will finish. Okay, so I only know this point and I use the preposition since to talk about it. So we have been speaking since midnight. So now it's 11 o'clock in the morning and we are still speaking. So it's present perfect continuous showing the unfinished action which is still in progress. Okay, and we use since for that to show when it started. You can also use it in present perfect with state verbs. Okay, so they don't have present perfect continuous, they only use present perfect. But again, I use it for the beginning point. So I have known it since childhood. Okay, and people often ask, can I say from? No. You remember that from now is used in a fixed expression. So if you say I have known it from childhood, it could be okay in some accents. Okay, and now the trickiest ones. Okay, so I hear so many mistakes about this, so I recommend you to pay attention to this particular part. Okay, so we learned how to say about the moment of the beginning, yeah, the initial moment, and then the final moment of the action. And now when you want to say what's in between. Okay, so if you want to show how long the action was happened for, okay, so and so on and so on. So between these points, the length, how long the action was happening, we use the preposition for. So you can't use since, you can't use to, until, nothing. Okay, so how long, the length of the period, so you show the period of the action. So this is very used preposition, so be careful about it. We traditionally use it much for the present perfect or the present perfect continuous tenses, because it can show us how long the unfinished action has been happening up to the moment of now when we look at it. Yes, so we have been speaking for 2 hours. Well, I didn't take 11-hour example from the previous board, but now, yeah, like we started 2 hours ago. We have been speaking since, okay, so like the point 2 hours ago. And how long have we been speaking? So we have been speaking for 2 hours. But it works for finished actions too. That's why I'm telling you to be careful. So you can use this preposition with past simple if you show not the unfinished actions, but like in our example, yeah, the finished action. So it started, for example, at 10, it finished at 12, it lasted for 2 hours, okay? So it can be used both for perfect tenses and simple, past simple, okay? So you can use it for the finished period too. A lot of people are trying to use during here. So during does not show the length of it, okay? So during means in the process of something. So it just shows that the action was going on, okay? I met him during my holiday in Spain. So it has nothing to do with the time. It shows the process. So that's why I gave you this example. We found we had a lot in common during our talk, during our conversation. So while we were speaking, during, in the process of our conversation. So never use during with any kind of numbers. It's not possible. It's one of the most typical mistakes in English, so please don't do that, okay? During. If you can replace it with the phrase in the process of, it is during. If you have the number, if you have the how long, it should be for, okay? So, and while is similar to during, they are grammatically different. So they mean the same, in the process of. But if you noticed, I used a noun, talk or conversation after during. After while, you use a sentence. So here I show you it's a subject and another verb, okay? We found we had a lot in common while we were speaking, while we were talking. So this sentence and this sentence, they mean the same, but you see the grammar structure is just different. So here it is the grammatical difference, but here it is the difference in meaning. Okay, so I hope that now it's clear, and I would like to ask you to practice a little bit. So in the next slide you will see several sentences and you need to guess the prepositions which should be used. Okay, in case of the questions, watch the video again or contact me and ask the question. You can download the table of this with all the examples from my website www.stordart.com. So see you in the next videos. Thank you.